The lights are flashing and the gates are open. An historic moment in the history of Gibraltar. The land frontier.
February 5th, 1985. Almost 16 years after Francisco Franco ordered the complete closure of Spain's frontier with Gibraltar, crowds gathered as the gates which had separated neighbours for so long swung open for good, ushering in a new era of cross-border relations. Today we find ourselves at the brink of another sea change, the complete removal of that physical frontier, and along with it promises of joint prosperity, concerns over loss of security, and questions over the unknown. 41 years on, I sit down with Andrew Haynes, Peter Isola and Freddie Vasquez as they look back at that night and share what that moment meant for those who lived through it as Gibraltar prepares for the future.
And here are the scenes for you. Already 11 minutes into February the 5th.
It was a very exciting time. The frontier was opening completely. We'd had it open since October '82 for pedestrians that were resident in Gibraltar, resident in Spain. But this was a full opening, cars coming across for the first time. It was extremely exciting.
Very liberating.
We wanted to be there across, led by James Gajero, who was always organised these events. And it was like a electric. We couldn't actually queue up. So police kept pushing us around. Suddenly it opened and we shot across. So it was very exciting, I have to say.
We were then celebrating the return of the status quo ante, what it had been for our parents. What we're now looking at is a brave new world. So it's very different because this is an even bigger chapter.
The lights are flashing and here they come. Here come the two gentlemen who are going to unlock the future of Gibraltar. That future that has been hanging fire for 16 years since the gates were closed by Franco finally in 1969. Moments of doubt from the Gibraltar side. Moments of elation. The great cry goes up, British. Senor Mariano Baquedano, I beg your pardon, Baquedano, the civil governor of the province of Cádiz, unlocking the gate. He's assisted by Senor Villarreal from the Ministry of External Affairs. They seem to be having a little trouble, or they're giving the Spanish journalists an action replay. And it is 24 seconds past midnight. And somebody else has come up to try and have a go. Did they forget to oil it? The bolt is back. The lights are flashing. And the gates are open. An historic moment in the history of Gibraltar. The land frontier open now to all categories of citizens of the world. No longer is Gibraltar an island.
Well, the funny thing is we tried to be the first, but we weren't.
Yes, we tried hard.
We were the fifth car across the
Yeah.
miracle.
I was older than them, but we were
still are.
We were still too young to have any deep thoughts. Those deep thoughts came later. We didn't know what to expect. I didn't know whether the focus was going to be on cars leaving Gibraltar, which is what I thought, but in fact it was completely wrong. It was cars coming in. That was the fourth person who's not here, James. That was his thinking. You then drive the car.
Well, I think unusually he had a car over there.
How did he have?
He must have taken on the Monsculpin.
He must have taken it.
We had a car there as well.
So the car was on the other side.
Gibraltarians had loads of cars parked in our linea. All the garage in Linea. I can't remember.
And then
with
there was
Gibraltar
like
cars,
a Scalextric set up by the police. A Scalextric circuit, there would have been at least a mile or a kilometre in the circuit. And you weren't queuing in an orderly fashion. You were on the Scalextrics, waiting for the music to stop, and then
musical chairs.
You were then making your way. And so they were all jockeying for position, thinking the fly's going to go up now. And it was very funny because that added to a lot of the younger drivers were messing around, and the Spanish police were slightly confused and didn't know how to organize it.
But see, it was the excitement of the fair, not there was a fair, but that sort of excitement, going to a football match, it was just euphoria. We were all so up for it and excited about it.
Just gone up the red and white barrier, controlling the traffic from the Avenida San Felipe. On the other side is up, and the first vehicle to come through looks like a motor scooter. A gentleman has braved the elements, braved the crowds, and is moving through on his little Vespa. He's probably heard the saying, "Go by Lambretta, see the world better." And here comes our first vehicle, apart from those that have been allowed through for reasons known to the authorities, of course. The first vehicle in the shape of a Lambretta to move through into Gibraltar, the first vehicular crossing from Spain onto British soil.
I think you've all agreed then that it was Mr. Gajero, James Gajero.
He was the instigator.
Are you all agreed about who else was in the car? Because I think there's been some discussion as to who was there.
I couldn't remember him being there.
I think there's footage to evidence that I was there. But in my recollection, I was there. But
I think the photographs prove it.
Yeah, memory is a funny thing. Is that we were trying to remember this, and we couldn't remember who and everyone. Who,
I couldn't remember Freddie being there.
and so, yeah, memory is a funny thing. But we do remember the event clearly, and I remember, as you do, the scale electrics.
Yeah. And then coming in, I mean, there's so
then the
many
fuss when
TV
it
cameras,
came through.
reporters. I mean, they took a photograph, I think, because we had the flag.
Some more champagne flowing that I can see from here. And the next car comes through if it can get its way through the journalists, past the journalists.
And there we are. There's the umbrella. They were using it to keep the champagne off. Looks like Joni Cuello. I don't know whether it is. There's a champagne bottle being offered for a drink as the young ladies come through in an open car. Big British flag plastered onto the windscreen. Red, white and blue, I think. No, it's just red and blue. Red and blue umbrella.
It looks like something out of the cavalcade, David.
It does indeed.
Evidence, if slightly blurry, that all three were indeed among the 7 passengers crammed into a convertible that day. Champagne flowing freely, making little effort to keep a low profile. Although it seems theirs wasn't the only vehicle drawing some attention.
About 3 or 4 cars behind us, we later found out there's a big white Rolls Royce. And this Rolls Royce breezed into Gibraltar, did a circuit around the rock and left again before anyone realised it was a guy called Ronnie Knight, who was a well-known London gangster who was married to Barbara Windsor. And there was a sort of a warrant for his arrest out. And he got in and out. No one knew what was going on, obviously. The sort of security wasn't what it should have been. The police didn't know what the hell was going on. And this guy just breezed in and out. And this scandal broke out the next day that one of the first people to come in was this gangster. But the funny thing is that there was obviously all that excitement, the euphoria of the... But then very quickly, things got very sticky at the frontier. And I remember there were 4-hour queues to get across in the period afterwards. And so it took a long time for things to settle down.
Because it was a reluctant opening on the part of Spain. They were forced to open because they wanted to join the European Union.
Yeah. And the thing, obviously, also is, as we all know, I mean, you're too young to remember, but the frontier officially shut in 68, but actually...
63. It was shut from about 65.
No, for 5 or 6 years before then, one didn't go across. Yeah. To get across, you'd have to spend 3 hours in a sort of in a Wetherspoon post getting bodily served. Yeah, I mean, it was just, effectively, it was shut for a long time before 1968.
In the late 60s, the poor guys who would drive in a motor car or sort of caravan or whatever, they'd go around and they'd try and go out, and it could be a day before they got out because at that time they were letting across 1 car per hour in the 60s. Yeah. So the frontier was effectively closed long before 69. But it let the pedestrians through, the workers, the dockyard could go through. And then, morning to night, obviously they closed and 9,000 Spanish workers were. But we had our cousins living with us, and your cousin as well, Maddie and Antonito. And they go to the schools in Gibraltar, and from one day to the next, closed back to Algeciras. I think about 65 was the last time I had gone because my father was then blacklisted as a politician. He couldn't go to Spain. And I didn't go to Spain until 77 in the Mons Calpe route. And I remember arriving in Spain and being worried that because my name was Peter Isola on my passport, I was going to have a problem. But anyway, that's the mentality at the time. No?
Yeah.
So it was...
Completely different now. This is, as you've said, this is a brave new world. No Gibraltarian or Spaniard alive has experienced an open frontier. It's centuries ago since last we had this freedom and this opening. Any chance that you might sort of get the old crew together, be one of the first cars through to...
Take things.
Well, James isn't here, is he?
Yeah.
We've all lost our driver.
If James was here, he might, yeah. he might have got something together.
He's come. He's going to be here next week. He's coming.
But not tomorrow.
He might be hatching something. You never know.
But the car's being showered with champagne, as you've seen there. Great scenes of joy as the car comes
The
towards
car's
you,
actually
George.
green, David. Yes,
It's
the
green.
car is green. It hasn't got to me yet. I can just see it now as the crowd's open in front of me. A very elegant job indeed.
Looking at the footage, there does seem to be a bit of a festival atmosphere on the day. There were hundreds, if not thousands of people crowding around.
Very exciting, isn't it?
What were you feeling in the days leading up to it? I mean, you must have planned
Euphoria.
this. You must have got the car ready and sort of...
Yeah, but as I remember, there were a lot of false alarms, weren't there? That it was going to happen, it didn't happen. You know, and they kept delaying it, and eventually, you know, yeah.
It was a victory for two societies separated by a frontier over politics.
Yeah.
That's what it was.
I mean, it was driven by Spain joining the European Union.
Yep.
But it was terrific.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It's the start of our economy, our economic growth.
Gibraltar was a bit of a bubble, not just sort of physically, but economically as well. And there was a bit of a risk when the pedestrian opening meant that people could leave, but that people couldn't really come in with their cars and whatnot.
The economy was circular, so a large civil service, a very heavy dependent on the MOD, about 60%.
Huge.
High taxation, and it meant that the money would spin round and round and round. And it was something that government, or the financial secretary, who was then an official appointee to government, would be able to balance the economy so that no unemployment existed, because the political thinking was, if there's unemployment in large numbers, Gibraltar's resistance to a siege will be undermined. So this way you could have everyone employed, and it depended on not having leakage of money. Otherwise, you couldn't keep this thing going circular. With pedestrian opening, there was a big leak into Spain, but without the reciprocal Spanish expenditure in Gibraltar.
But when it fully opened in 85, the change was completely different.
But let's not
People
forget, I mean,
coming
the
in.
fact is that Gibraltar was relatively wealthy compared to the hinterland, because we forget that this is the poorest corner in the whole of Spain. La Linea was just the poorest town in the poorest region in the poorest part of Spain. And so by comparison, we were well off. But it's nothing like today. I mean, Gibraltar, we lived comfortably. But I mean, you know, the wealth that's been generated since in the last 40 years is it's a different league. I mean, I remember, you know, back in the day when I started working, at lunchtime, Gibraltar would close down. There was nothing open. I remember we used to go home for lunch and everything was shut. I mean, it was asleep in the
from
middle
Bell
of the day.
Lane to Supreme Court for an application at 2:30, and I wouldn't see a soul. Everybody was home having lunch. The shops were all closed.
It was so different.
It was so different. It was a ghost town.
We were in a time warp, and we didn't even know it.
Yeah. For many years.
As young men, in the years preceding the pedestrian opening, what did a closed frontier mean for you? Must have been in your 20s, early 30s when that happened. How was it to be a young man in Gibraltar and to have those constraints on you?
We had a great time.
We had a great time because socially we all knew each other. There were big groups of friends. It was very safe. You used to go out even as a young kid, never mind as older in our 18s or 20s. And the parents wouldn't worry about us, and we'd turn up again in the evening. We'd go off to Sampis to play tennis or whatever. It was a pretty good atmosphere, but it was very limiting because you couldn't get out. And for me personally, I think I was quite fortunate that I came back in more or less September '82 after qualifying as a lawyer and everything else, and at least the frontier opened for pedestrians. So I got that leverage, but it was difficult.
I think it just opened it at the right time for us.
For us.
We'd had the nice safe time, but the place needed to open up, and it was, we benefited enormously.
It was very limited socially.
We were a lucky generation compared to our parents.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
They lost a lot.
They suffered.
They sacrificed
a lot
hugely
for us. Really?
Yeah.
No, I'm in the Air Force.
Oh, you're over here in the Air Force, right. Who did you hope to get that message via, the BBC?
Well, ITN mainly.
A poignant reminder of our forebears, those who suffered hardships which most of us have never known, and who lay the foundations for Gibraltar's prosperity in the years that followed.
The surfboards to come through, the windsurfers. They're next in the line. and hopefully when they come through I'll be able to grab them for a moment and have a short word with them, because they are pushing the traffic through very quickly on this end because there's such a long line.
Then 85, my father was really worried about security. And now, in a way, with the frontier going down, no passports, we have concerns about security. And I know the government is dealing with it.
Have you noticed the amount of cameras now?
Well, I don't know. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, we'll have to up our security, because people who previously couldn't come into Gibraltar at all are now able to just walk across, because they had to cross the frontier.
Entirely different situation to the context in which the frontier shut for the first time. There are parallels, you've said, with the concerns over safety, but are you generally optimistic? Are you generally thinking that this will be for the greater good of Gibraltar and the...
Careful how he answers. You'll know whether he's a pessimist or an optimist.
I'm completely optimistic. I think it's
absolutely. Peter?
I'm optimistic, but I have concerns about how we will grow. We need to understand the treaty more, to what extent Spanish influence in decisions we make, whether it's in trade, whether it's in services, how that's going to develop over the years. We have to be concerned about that, because we don't know how it's going to happen, the independent committees and things, how they're going to work. But overall, one has to be optimistic. It's a change, but it's an exciting change, and young people must really embrace it.
Up to 2016, Gibraltar was gunning along. Everything was going as there wasn't a cloud in the sky.
Yeah.
2016 came. We've had 10 years of uncertainty, and I think now this lifts the cloud again. I think we're back to where we were 10 years ago, and I just see no impediments to Gibraltar's growth and prosperity now.
But the incredible thing is the growth and prosperity we've had during those 10 years. Well, we had the Brexit decision, and we'd built our finance centre, our lives around being within the European Union, and suddenly that's all taken away from us. And yet, despite that, we have developed our economy surprisingly well, and it's just grown.
Yeah, but I would also like to see...
But sorry, I should say that it's grown.
A better command of Spanish, because it's been lost to a very large extent. And I think that it's time that we emphasize the need to have that language, because that's what you're going to need as an essential tool to make the most of the opportunity that's coming.
But that's always been the case, because since the frontier opened, we should have played that role. But what's important about when I say incredible how our economy has grown during the last 10 years, it's because we managed to maintain the status quo. So we've been in this uncertainty, but we managed to maintain that EU relationship, which enabled us to grow. So the decision was, do we accept an arrangement where we have to give us something, like any arrangement you have to negotiate, and maintain that ability to grow, or do we turn our backs and say no, and let's see what happens with a closed frontier?
To an extent, it hasn't been a unilateral decision this time, but we didn't have many options in that sense.
I don't think we did. I think this has taken the brakes off, and now we can just get on and grow.
Without an open frontier, without the free flow of people, it's very difficult to develop and maintain our economy. So from that aspect, I welcome it. But obviously, there are aspects of it that are concerned, security, giving up a certain amount of control over your borders.
It's an opportunity for a new generation.
But we need an open frontier.
It's going to be a huge opportunity.
Yeah, the negotiation has been extraordinary. I mean, the depth of that negotiation and the complications of the treaty are equivalent to an accession treaty. I mean, as much work has gone into sorting this out as has gone into admitting a new member to the EU. So I tip my hat off to everyone involved in the negotiation, the government. I mean, they've had dozens of London civil servants helping, working on this. It's taken a hell of a lot of work and a long time, and I take my hat off to it. And the Spanish side as well, because by all accounts, there's been such goodwill between the two negotiating teams that, no one in those teams ever really doubted that there would be a resolution, and I take my hat off to them. It's been...
I think it's just tremendous. I mean, I'd repeat everything Freddie has said in terms of the teams and how hard, and that such a small place like Gibraltar has been able to navigate these waters. Yeah. But I think it's tremendously exciting, and I think young people have to embrace it and make the most of it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, I think the irony is that we voted massively against Brexit, and it actually was a mistake. This has worked in our favour.
Yeah, we've got what do you say? The opposite of Brexit.